Tonight, we turn to a voice that has been silent for too long. A voice that once filled stadiums, that once calmed markets, that once steadied a nation in crisis. Barack Obama has re-entered the conversation, not with whispers, not with careful euphemisms, but with fire. And his target? The man who followed him into the Oval Office, Donald J. Trump. At Hamilton College, Obama spoke for over an hour. And in that time, he delivered something we rarely see anymore. A speech that was less about sound bites and more about substance. Less about slogans, more about survival. The survival of American democracy itself. Let's not bury the lead. Obama did not mince words. He made it plain. If he had ever done what Trump is doing, the system would have crucified him. Imagine, Obama asked, if he had pulled Fox News' credentials. Imagine if he had threatened universities for allowing students to protest. Imagine if he had told law firms, represent my critics and I'll destroy your business. Imagine the outrage, the headlines, the Republican fury. The man is right. You can imagine it because we've lived it before. But now, that same Republican Party shrugs. They stand silent as Trump tramples the rule of law, dismantles the independence of the judiciary, and wages war on the very foundations of democracy. Silence, complicity. Obama wasn't there to settle old scores. He wasn't auditioning for another campaign. He was doing what elder statesmen rarely dare to do in America, telling the truth, without fear of whether the polls or the pundits approve. He reminded the audience, and by extension the entire country, that democracy is not self-executing. It requires maintenance, it requires vigilance, and above all, it requires courage. Listen to the man's cadence, his courtroom-like precision. He laid out the case like a prosecutor who knows the jury has grown numb to corruption. First, he reminded us that for most of the post-World War II era, despite partisan fights, there was still a creed, a shared belief that democracy was worth protecting. Democrats, Republicans, conservatives, liberals, yes, they disagreed on policy, but they all respected the system itself. They agreed that the Constitution was sacred, that the Bill of Rights was untouchable, that freedom of speech, freedom of worship, freedom of the press, those were not bargaining chips, they were non-negotiable. And then he pivoted. He said bluntly, that consensus is gone. The bonds that held us together have frayed. The creed has been abandoned. Why? Partly because government grew large, unwieldy, distant. Partly because inequality widened, leaving too many Americans feeling excluded. Partly because politics became tribal and identity became a weapon. And partly because the media, once a guardian of truth, has been attacked, delegitimized, and in some corners, corrupted. Think about the courtroom drama unfolding here. Exit A, Trump's tariffs. Obama mentioned them almost as an aside, pointing out that the economic policies we've just seen aren't going to help America. But the tariffs were just the surface evidence. The deeper crime, Obama warned, is a federal government that now bullies universities, intimidates law firms, and punishes dissent. That is not democracy. That is authoritarianism with a red hat. And here's where Obama threw the hammer down. Imagine if I had done this. It was more than rhetorical. It was a direct indictment of hypocrisy. Had Obama threatened the press, the right wing would have screamed tyranny. Had Obama intimidated law firms, Fox News would have held week-long specials. Had Obama punished students for protesting, Lindsey Graham would still be giving interviews about it. But Trump does it, and the Republican Party averts its eyes. Obama did not let his audience wallow in despair. He gave them the hard truth. No savior is coming. Not Joe Biden, not Barack Obama himself. The only savior left is the American citizen. The most important office in a democracy, Obama declared, is not president, it is citizen. That line should be carved in marble, because it shatters the complacency that has taken root in American life. For too long, people have treated democracy as background noise, nice to have, but not urgent. Obama warned, it's about to hit you where it hurts, the price of eggs. Democracy and rule of law may sound abstract until you're paying bribes just to get a business permit, until the police knock on your door because of who you voted for, until your children's future is dictated not by freedom but by fear. That's what separates America from Russia, he said. That's why our economy worked. Not because we're magically blessed, but because we built a rules-based society where ordinary people didn't have to fear government retaliation. And now that foundation is cracking. Obama challenged not just Republicans, but also the comfortable liberals, the corporations that posted Black Lives Matter hashtags in 2020 but are silent now. He mocked the selective courage of billionaires who care about social justice when it's trendy but stay mute when it's costly. He scolded universities with billion-dollar endowments that cave at the first whiff of government intimidation. He told them freedom of speech is not free, it costs something. If you won't pay the price now, don't dare pretend you believe in it. And then he aimed at the culture wars on campus. Students, he said, must learn to face uncomfortable speech, even offensive speech, because the real world is not a trigger-free zone. He made it clear, cancel culture is not the answer either. If you disagree with someone, debate them, defeat them with ideas, don't silence them. Because once you normalize silencing, you hand the tools of censorship to whoever is in power. And then he aimed at the culture wars on campus. Students, he said, must learn to face uncomfortable speech, even offensive speech, because the real world is not a trigger-free zone. He made it clear, cancel culture is not the answer either. If you disagree with someone, debate them, defeat them with ideas, don't silence them. Because once you normalize silencing, you hand the tools of censorship to whoever is in power. That was classic Obama, balancing critique of the right with critique of the left, but always circling back to the central question: who are we? What do we stand for? Are we willing to sacrifice, or are we just clapping along until democracy collapses under our watch? And here's the brilliance of his speech. He didn't just lecture, he painted a picture. He told stories of the Senate gyms, where the men's room was sprawling and the women's gym was basically a closet, reminding us how recent the change has been, how fragile representation still is. He reminded us that tribalism in politics didn't just appear overnight, it grew as more voices crashed the party. He reminded us that diversity makes democracy harder, but also richer, that inequality poisons trust, that media fragmentation blinds us to truth. This was not nostalgia. It was indictment. It was also a summons. Obama said plainly, for most of history, fighting injustice required sacrifice. You might lose money. You might lose friends. You might lose comfort. That's the price of citizenship in a democracy. That's the price of freedom. He closed with a warning, but also a dare. Don't just say you believe in equality, fight for it. Don't just claim you value the rule of law, stand by it when it's inconvenient. Don't just chant about freedom of speech, defend it when your opponent's words cut you to the bone. That's the real test. Ladies and gentlemen, this was not just a college speech. It was a courtroom summation, a closing argument delivered by a former president who knows the jury is restless, divided, and cynical. He placed America itself on trial, and he asked us, are we still worthy of the Constitution we inherited? So as Obama spoke at Hamilton College, the question echoed louder than the applause. Will citizens answer the call? Or will we scroll past, shrug, and let the walls of democracy rot? History will judge. But Obama is right about one thing. The verdict belongs not to presidents, not to parties, not to pundits. It belongs to us.